Hello to everybody that's joining. I'm James. I'm an agent at Folio, and I guess a lot of you will know Owen, obviously. But Owen, maybe you could introduce yourself.
Yeah, sure. I'm Owen Davey. My pronouns are he/him. I'm based in the UK. I'm an illustrator that's been working for about 13 years professionally, I think. And pretty much that whole time I've been with Folio. I predate James at the place. Yeah.
Was it like
mix of everything?
12 years or something?
Yeah, I think I graduated 2009, and I quickly tried to join several agencies, and Folio is who I went with. I think that was in 2009. So, yeah.
Yeah. So around the time you were starting to be an illustrator, I was also starting. I'm not a successful illustrator, obviously. So I think probably you're in a really good place to tell people what to do when they're starting out, and I'm in a good place to tell them what not to do. So.
Yeah, I think one thing I was going to say to start off with, though, was that like all of the things that I say are based on my own kind of experiences, and I think a lot of people have different experiences, and obviously some of it might be a little bit outdated, I guess, but I think a lot of the same things apply, and I chat to quite a lot of people about it, and the advice I give often seems to kind of be helpful for people. So hopefully people find it helpful today.
Yeah. I think we've got a good complement of views between us. So this is the first Instagram Live we're doing, hopefully of many. It seemed like a logical place to start with starting your illustration career, which, you know, one of my favorite parts of the job, being an agent, was having students up to the studio to talk about this exact thing. But since the pandemic, obviously, that hasn't happened. So and as you know, I'm not really in a position where I can start inviting students around to my basement, so, because oh, and before I forget, this is live, so try not to say anything too offensive. I know what you like after 6 p.m.
I may swear. I'll try not to, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, thanks for everybody. Thanks to everybody that's joined, and thanks especially to those of you that have sent questions. You can feel free to send questions to us live here, but maybe we should dive in.
Sounds good. I'm up for that.
Okay. So this seemed like a good one to start. I developed a style and now have a personal portfolio. How do I start getting clients?
Mm-hmm. Do you want to start, or do you want me to start?
Well, you know, I think that's a great position to be in. There are a lot of people that haven't developed their style, and we'll get into that, I think. But starting to get clients is tough. Yeah, I mean, that is the toughest part about it, because you have to be persistent. You have to just break down that wall of thinking that you're annoying people by getting in touch with them, and even before that, you've got to find the right people to get in touch with, which is no easy task sometimes. So tell me how you did it, Owen. What's your process?
So for me, I think one of the most important things is research, and I think that goes for kind of my whole approach to illustration in general. I think starting to research stuff first of all is the best thing, because if you understand the industry a bit, you start to understand a little bit about kind of the types of jobs, and maybe how whether they suit you as well, like understanding whether editorial is about right for you, because you know, if you take forever to create artworks, that's absolutely fine. But with editorial, there's short deadlines, so understanding that they might not be right for you is kind of a good step in the right direction. And then once you've kind of researched that side of stuff, then thinking about, well, you know, what sort of clients do I want to work with? And I see a lot of people contacting people who are the big names, like, you know, the huge companies that people who have been doing it for 30 years have never been able to work with. And I sort of, I don't want to, like, it's not like managing expectations, but I think it's like hedging your bets. So yeah, contact the big companies. They might love your work. Go for it. That's fine. But also I think smaller companies, like I do a lot of like weird trade magazines, or I seem to do lots of stuff for like American universities and things like that. I've got quite a lot of work from stuff that maybe is a little bit kind of not at the forefront of what you think of when you kind of first go into illustration. But actually, they've been some of my favorite jobs. They often give you quite a lot of creative freedom, and they're really great people to work with, and actually the budgets are quite good as well. And you know, I feel like that sort of stuff, you know, making sure that you're you know, diversifying who you're contacting, I think is a really good approach to it.
I would agree with that. I mean, really, when you're starting out, you'll know the big names, but that's just such a tiny fraction of the possible clients out there. So, and you know, editorial is a good way in for most illustrators, because it's quick turnarounds, low budgets. Editorial clients are more willing to take a risk on a newbie, right? But so you can send your work to The Guardian and Wired and well, the big names, right? And you might have a shot. I mean, I know plenty of people that worked with Wired and The Guardian for their very first jobs.
Guardian was my first job.
Yeah, Wired
really
was mine. Yeah. So
yeah, nice.
So there are thousands and thousands and thousands, you know, of different magazines and newspapers that you could work for. But trying to find them, you know, I would say the best way to do that is to look at, you know, everybody that's watching this will be following a load of illustrators on their Instagrams. See who other people have worked for, because you're guaranteed to find a load of names and magazines that you've never heard of and you never would have thought to look for. But in your portfolio, in all the artist portfolios, there's magazines and client names listed, and it's endless. It's an endless list.
Yeah.
You know, it's so back to the question Prince of Baltics sent in. He's developed a style and has a portfolio ready. So I guess my question would be, why haven't you started looking for clients before that? You know, it's as soon as you've got a few decent images ready, I would say you can just start looking, because that's a skill in itself, is getting in touch with clients and rustling up some work. You got to start as soon as you've got something that you're happy with, and maybe you've shown it to a few people that know what they're talking about and got a bit of feedback. Just start sending it out, because chances are you're gonna be ignored for quite a while. So the sooner you start, the better, definitely.
I think there's often a barrier of confidence, which is you know, I don't want to diminish that. It can be a difficult thing to kind of sort of expose yourself to people and just be like, this is what I do, and be worried that people aren't going to like it. I think what I would counteract that with is that if they don't like it, they probably just won't respond. Or if they do respond, they'll give you some constructive feedback, which you can act on and you can kind of work from. And there's often something I like to sort of point out to people is that, you know, if you think about some of the biggest bands that have ever been, like the Beatles or Rolling Stones or whatever, you know, maybe half the world loves them, but half the world hates them. You know, some of the greatest musicians theoretically that have ever lived, and lots of people hate them. So why shouldn't people hate your work as well? And like, if you embrace that and embrace that some people are going to like it, some people aren't, I think that's a really good place to start, to start toughening yourself up to that, because it's like, there's no point trying to turn these other people around. Just find the people that do get what you're doing, that do appreciate what you're doing, and aim it towards them, because you're never going to please everyone, and it would be a boring world if you could. So
Yeah, and if you combine that thought with the fact that there are limitless clients that you could potentially work with, it's really just a numbers game, right? You just keep going and keep getting in touch with people. At a certain point, when you're developing your portfolio, that's all you need that at the start. But at a certain point, you should switch your focus. Once you've got enough decent work to get paid for, then you should switch your focus to a lot more searching for clients, because in my experience, nothing is going to motivate you to work as much as getting your first paying clients. Definitely.
And it's a huge learning curve as well. Like when you're actually working directly with clients who may not always agree with you, or sometimes have ideas that you hadn't thought of. There are some art directors that come up with amazing ideas based off what you've suggested to them, and it's very much a collaboration, and there's no real substitute for that. So starting to get those kind of experiences under your belt are invaluable.
When I was trying to be an illustrator, I did so many things wrong that I can think about now and keep me awake at night if I think too hard about them. But I was pretty good at university. My work was quite good, so I probably got a bit arrogant, and I thought, well, it'll be easy. Just be easy when I leave uni. I'll find work. And it was possibly a year and a half before I got a paid job. But I had a part-time job in a bar at the same time, so I was working late nights, drinking a lot, rolling up at the studio at sort of 1 in the afternoon, and working a nice solid 4 hours before I went home to watch Neighbours or whatever. So that arrogance held me back a lot, and I had to get over that. And also, it was the fear of getting in touch with people, the fear of rejection. Even what I would now think of as normal interactions with people, if they said, I think there's one example of someone that worked at the Guardian. I sent her my work, and she said, I don't work there anymore. Can you send it to this person? Which, on reflection, that was super nice of her to do that. But I was just mortified and embarrassed. And I thought, oh God, that was the worst. Didn't do my research. I'm an idiot. Anyway, shall we move on to another question?
Yeah, I did wonder I wonder about the next one, about preparing a portfolio. Is that a good one to go into next?
Yeah. So how do you prepare a portfolio for applying to an agency? How many projects? What about the style, etc.? Yeah, it's a good one. I would say, generally speaking, agencies aren't for absolute beginners. If you're just coming out of university with a portfolio full of your college work, that's probably not going to interest most agencies, unless you're particularly ahead of the curve, because agencies really want to see somebody that can already handle themselves professionally. If an agency is going to take on a student or a new graduate, a new graduate, they're untested, so it's a risk. Even if the work's great, you've no idea if that person can handle themselves professionally. They've got no experience in the industry, so they don't really know what to expect. Even they themselves don't know if they can handle it. So it's a bit of a gamble. I would say an agencies are really for freelancers that have done a few years of work by themselves. They've got a few clients under their belt. They've proved that they can work to a deadline and just generally be a professional, and they're ready to take their work to the next level, you know, find bigger and better clients, more interesting jobs. Would you agree with that?
Well, so this is, I was very lucky in that I managed to get folio sort of straight out of uni. So I guess I'm an exception on that. I think I got very lucky in the sort of timing, and I think my portfolio was good, but I think I handled myself in quite a professional way, which I think helped. I always had quite a business mind, which I think was very helpful. It's probably an element of luck. But I do think that something that I think is really important is when people contact people, whether it's agents or potential clients or any of that kind of stuff, is the idea of keeping yourself organized in like understanding who you've contacted, when you contacted them, did they respond? If they responded, did they give you feedback? If they've given you feedback, have you sorted that feedback? Have you acted on it? Have you done new work based on that feedback? If you have, keep in contact, send them that stuff. I think Folio and I had a little discussion about my portfolio was full of kind of full bleed illustrations, and they're like, it would be nice to see some spot illustrations in there. And so I did some spot illustrations and sent them through. And I think seeing that, one, I could do that in a fairly speedy time, and two, that I'm actually listening to them and, you know, responding and sort of having that kind of professionalism within it. I feel like that helped me. I mean, I can't say for sure because, I mean, neither of us were on the other end of it, but I think that sort of stuff just, I mean, I talk to quite a lot of people when I go into unis, and I do workshops, and I do lots of things, and I can tell when someone's not listening to me, whether it's by email or whether it's by you know, portfolio review or whatever. And fine, people don't need to listen to me at all. Like, feel free to ignore everything I say. Yes. I'm just one person. I just have one opinion. But I think it's important to listen, and then if you disagree with it, ignore it, rather than just be like, nah. Like, and I feel like, you know, it might be worth trying certain things. I was talking to someone today who was saying that, you know, it'd be good. Someone had responded saying that it might be good to see some like fruit or something in their portfolio. And I think that's great feedback, because, you know, understanding how food is part of, you know, editorial illustrations. I'm doing a food editorial at the moment. It keeps coming up, like, it's stuff that keeps coming. Oh, yeah. And although, you know, until you've tried it, you don't know whether it's something you might enjoy. And actually, it might turn out that like drawing onions is your favorite thing. And so I think that, you know, coming up with those ideas can be useful. You don't necessarily have to stick with it as your main kind of career point, but when someone has some experience, it is worth paying attention to it. But people aren't always right as well. It's worth remembering both things. Some people say stuff as if it's truth, but it's opinion. All of it's opinion. The things that are good to listen to are when someone has experience in terms of like, well, this sells well in the market. Like, that's a fact that you've discovered by, you know, working in that area for a long time. When they turn around and say, I don't like your style, you're not good enough, that's an opinion, and disregard that immediately. It's not helpful. You know, you can kind of improve on areas that they've suggested, but just if someone says you're not good enough, that's not helpful criticism. So, you know, you can disregard that part. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And a continuation of that, really, a lot of people, when they're just starting out, they have a pretty clear idea of what they want to do with illustration. You know, maybe they want to work in children's books, or they want to do, you know, I don't know, packaging design or something like that. And then, you know, really, I try and tell people often that a more varied approach, you know, a real mixture of different kinds of projects in your portfolio will get you hired more often, for one thing, but also it'll make your career more interesting. Like, in the grand scheme of things, you know, if you work on children's books all the time, it's hard work, you know, unless you have a massive big seller, it's not that big a money maker. They're going to take you months at a time. You're going to be sick of looking at the same pages every day. And really, it's good to have a mix of get some shorter editorial projects in there to break up your book projects, and then once you get a bit further on in your career, you might have some advertising jobs, which they could be a month long, or they could be a few days long, but they'll likely be better paid, and that kind of supplements your finances, at least, even if you're not particularly interested in the job. But I find that having a mixture of things is the way to go. So when you're preparing your portfolio, get a mixture of subjects in there. Once we've touched on style, and we should return to that. But once you've found a style that is working for you and is getting good feedback from people that know what they're talking about, not your friends or your family, then you should work on applying that style to lots of different subjects. You mentioned food. I talk about food illustrations all the time because it comes up so often in magazines.
Yep.
That and maps.
Yeah, I was about to say maps. Yeah.
Yeah. If you can do a map, you can do editorial work. No problem.
I really agree about the diversifying, your income streams, and I think if you want to make illustration a career, like there's lots of different ways to do illustration as a career. Some people do it part-time, some people do it, on the side, some people do it full-time. Like there's lots of different ways. It's a creative industry that you can kind of make work how you want it to work. Like you don't have to do a 9 to 5. Just so happens that works best for my approach. It didn't used to be, but with kids and stuff, like necessity. But you can kind of adjust things to make it work for you. And I think the goal is to make a sustainable career, something that will continue and endure, and that you're getting these different revenue streams, because you need to be able to pay the bills. And when if you get later on in your career, when you're getting more work than you can handle, then you can have the privilege of saying no to more jobs and things like that. But to start off with, some of the jobs might not be the thing that you absolutely want to do, but it could be fun. And it sometimes you learn things about yourself by doing them, and they can get stuff done. And also I think it's good not to be snobby about stuff. Like if you just say, oh, I only want to work for the New Yorker, it doesn't feel like you're going to get very far, and it doesn't feel like a good approach. Like I said, some of my favorite clients are people I've worked with again and again and again for a magazine I'd never heard of before I started working with them. But yeah. I love working with them. They've got great ideas. Like it's a really great collaboration. And yeah, sure, if I tell my family they've never heard of it and they don't care, it's not one that people celebrate, but it provides me a steady income, and then that allows me a bit more freedom to be, to reach out for some other things as well. So I think, yeah, fingers in many pies is a really useful and practical way to look at kind of making it a career rather than a passion. And I think that's the goal of,
Yeah. Well, you've carried that on all the way through your career, as far as I can tell. I mean, when you're just starting out, you're not a specialist in anything, right? Whether you have a particular interest in doing, well, maybe you want to be a food illustrator exclusively. Well, you're cutting out a hell of a lot of potential work by just showing that in your portfolio. It's only really later, once you're more established, that you might specialize in something. And I noticed Helen joined earlier. Shout out to Helen Green. Helen works on a lot of portraits, and that's great. Helen's really popular for portraits, but I imagine if a new artist starting out now just said, well, I'm just going to do portraits, yeah, they might do okay, or they might not. But if you want to make some money when you're starting out, frankly, you've got to try a lot of different things. Yeah. Hey, Helen. We got another question. We've got a question, a live question here. Got a couple actually. All right. What will the right way? What's the right way to approach a client for work? So, how would we actually communicate with a client for the first time?
So for me, again, I'm going back to research. I think research just sort of makes you feel empowered. Like if you understand what you're getting into, it makes you feel better in a conversation. And so when you're reaching out to someone, if you understand, oh, I'm speaking to the art director of this magazine. This magazine's been going for a few years. They regularly illustrate, regularly use illustrations, not on the cover but inside. Like, you know, understanding a few of those sort of basic pieces of information and understanding whether they're right for your style, like those sort of few bits of research, is a really great place to start, because you're like, well, I know that I'd fit in there. I know that my work would work there. So this isn't a sort of random email being sent out into the kind of ether. This is a legitimate kind of contact. You know, if you contact someone that doesn't, they're an art director but they don't employ illustrators, you're going to feel embarrassed about it. If they get back to you and say, we've never used an illustrator in our life, you'll be like, oh. And so I think understanding those sort of things is a really good place to start. And then for me, I think it's important not to give your life story. These are busy people. They see lots of portfolios. They maybe want a line or two about, you know, who you are and the work that you do, and then show your work front and center. I include like a 670 pixel wide illustration in the thing, maybe two, not big, because then that's going to fill up their inbox, or they're not going to see it the right way or whatever. It needs to be a low resolution image so they can see it straight away, and they'll be like, oh, this is an illustrator. I really like their work. And they, you know, they see that before they see your writing. Most of us are not going to be writers. We're going to be illustrators. Our strength lies in the images. So showing the images first off, I think, is a really good start. And then, you know, being polite but not kind of stiff. I usually say, you know, if I was contacting you, I'd say, hey, James, my name is Owen Davey. I'm an illustrator based in the UK. I've worked with blah, blah, blah. If I've got any clients that you will have heard of, I'll include them. If I haven't, I'll just leave it out. Because if I say I've worked for my brother's magazine, that you don't care. That's not going to help. And then I say, you know, I really like your agency. I feel like I might be quite a good fit. Here's a couple of examples of my work. If you'd like to see more, here's my website. Have a link to my website. All my contact details. Thanks for your time, Owen. Like, that's the sort of thing I would write. In fact, that's pretty much exactly what I did write to Folio when I kind of first contacted them. But I'd love to know your thoughts on it as well, because you may disagree with that. But that seems to have worked with me over the years.
Yeah. Well, I guess I can kind of see it from the other way around, where it's artists applying to the agency, and we could address that too. But yeah, I think being brief, being polite, and making the focus the artwork is absolutely the right way to go if you get in touch with a client. I don't care about your life story, frankly.
Yeah.
if I'm a client, I'm going to, let's say I'm an art director at Wired. I'm going to receive, I don't know, 100 emails from illustrators a week. I will most likely look at the email. If it's too wordy, I'm not going to read it. If there's an image there right in the front, I can't avoid seeing it. So I see it, and I either like it or I don't, but at least I've seen it. If you don't put an image in your email, then you're missing out. If you put only a link to your website, that means the person reading the email has to take an extra step. If it's a zip file, that's an extra step. That's something I got to open. I'm not opening those. Definitely not. If it's a link to a Google, Sheets document or whatever like that, it's not happening. You need one or two images in the email, and then a link to see more in your social or whatever. That's how I'd go for it. I guess on a similar subject, when applying to agencies, every one of them has got different ways that they like to accept submissions. So that comes back to research again. Because if you submit your work in the right way, then it will get looked at. But if you don't, then you run the risk of just nobody looking at it. And one of my pet hates is when an artist will get in touch to ask me how they can submit their work. Now, it seems innocuous enough, but I know those details are on the website. I know those details are on every agency website. So they're asking me to do their work, do their research for them, and it's, you know,
Yeah.
It happens a lot. That's why it annoys me.
Yeah, you want people to take the initiative. I mean, something. This is a slight aside, actually, but I feel like it probably happens with you as well. Like if someone contacts me to ask for my opinion or ask for my advice or whatever, if I take the time to respond to them, which I always do, and they never respond to me again, I think that's the rudest thing. Like, you know, they've asked for something, just a simple "thank you very much, I appreciate your time," and I feel like that's just good to get into the sort of rhythm of that, to kind of have that thing of like, well, you know, people are busy, people are doing stuff, they don't have to, you know, you're not entitled to an answer from people, and so if they do, then I think it's good practice to start kind of saying like, oh, thank you, or, you know, that kind of stuff. And I assume that's probably true for you as well.
Yeah, that's happened to me a few times, for sure. I actually think, you know, I do it. Well, you do a lot of portfolio reviews. I mean, maybe you could tell people about your monthly portfolio reviews.
Yeah, so I do a thing called portfolio chats. I'm kind of trying to grow it at the moment, but through my Instagram at the moment, every so often I will post a thing where it says, you know, portfolio chats are open, and various people, including James and me and various other lovely humans who have kind of donated their time, basically do half-hour one-to-one chats with people from kind of marginalised, oppressed groups. Like, it's, you know, a lot of people who are underrepresented in the industry. The industry has still got a lot of work to do in order to sort that out. And so if you fall into any of those categories, then kind of check it out. It will be more accessible in the future. At the moment, annoyingly, it's only through my Instagram, but yeah, they're totally free. They're just there to try and make sure that people are kind of empowered to know what is expected of them in the industry, but also what they should expect from the industry as well, you know. And yeah, they can be anything from talking through your portfolio to understanding what it is to be an illustrator, to asking how to get clients. You know, a lot of the stuff we're chatting about today is often what I talk about in those chats as well. But that one-to-one thing gives you, you know, gives the space to actually find out what it is the other person wants from their career, and I can sort of see if I can provide any guidance with that. So yeah, and there's some amazing people that do it as well. So I would recommend checking that out if you want to.
Yeah, well, the reason I brought it up is because we've both done a lot of portfolio reviews, and I don't know about you, but I'd say 80% of them I never hear from again. So if I give anyone any advice, I feel kind of invested in that person. You know, once we've spent some time talking, I want to hear from them again. You know, if anyone ever gives you a review of your portfolio, I would say follow up, because most people don't. And if somebody follows up to me, well, I'll carry on helping, frankly, a lot of the time, you know, if I can. I love answering questions. You know, I like it. It's fun. It's fun. So people are asking me questions on my blog and things like that. And if they don't say thank you, it's annoying. I don't think about it. If they follow up and they've got more questions, most of the time I'll carry on answering them. So why not?
Yeah, and I think it's good practice as well, because I mean, there's several clients who I wanted to work with, you know, when I left uni, who I started contacting, and they got back to me with, you know, good feedback. They said, oh, we really like your work, but there's not a project that's right for you right now. And you know, some of those clients, it took me like 5 or 6 years to actually get a project going, but I was regularly sending them work. And actually, you know, I might to tell a little story about yeah, so Flying iBooks, who I've been working with for a long time now, they're part of No Brow, and I saw No Brow had released their second book their sort of No Brow 2, and it was this screen printed thing. It was absolutely beautiful, and I was like, I really want to work with these clients. So I left uni, I contacted them. Sam and Alex, who were kind of heading it up at the time, responded. They liked my work, but they said there was nothing right that for what they needed right now. But they said to kind of keep in touch. So I kept doing that, and so I left in 2009. I think my first book I published with them was 2015, and that basically came out of me sending them a picture of a gelada, which is a type of monkey, and then them going to an acquisitions meeting. Shortly after, someone remembered that that someone had drawn a monkey, and they're like, "Who was that?" "Oh, it was Owen. Wonder if he'd be interested in doing a non-fiction book about monkeys." Yes.
Wow.
And I'm now working on my 8th book, I think, with them. I don't know, which is a good sign. That means I've done quite a lot of books with them.
Yeah, that's amazing.
So, but that took 6 years of me being like regularly contacting them, sending them new work, sending them ideas for projects, being showing I had a passion for it, showing I was interested. They could see my development, they could see my work get better. Probably when I first contacted them, I wasn't good enough, like for what they wanted, or you know, I wasn't ready for it, or it wasn't their preference or whatever. But by the time that we actually kind of got the first project going, it was right and it worked. And so yeah, I think that's a kind of win for tenacity, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I mean that's a great story. I never heard that before. It's brilliant. It's hard. It's hard, I think, for me to wrap my head around that in some respects, because there are some people that have that kind of drive and persistence, and they never get anywhere, unfortunately, because they're lacking maybe a bit of self-awareness in where their work fits in the illustration world. So I think about that sometimes, but let's focus on the positive. Since you mentioned publishing, we had a question in the comment from Amanda. How does an illustrator get into publishing illustration for books, such as children's or similar? Is it a good idea to have most of the book pictures and text ready to pitch, or just the concept and a draft ready? Any thoughts on this?
So I've done a bit of both. I think when you're starting out in your career, I think basically most publishers want to collaborate with you. They don't want a finished book. They want something that they've got expertise, they've got skills, they've got knowledge, they've got a team that know what they're doing. So they will make your book better. So if you present them with a final book, they'll think, nah, they don't want to listen to my views. Yes. They don't want to work with me. So I think the generally accepted thing from what I've heard over the years is that you do a refined rough of the whole story. It's all written out. You've got the pages kind of roughly laid out, but it's all just pencil sketches. You know, it's not just like a thumbnail sketch or something. It's something that you can see what's going on and you can see the text, but it doesn't have to be, you know, totally done or anything like that. And then you have 3 to 5 final images just to really be like, this is how good it will look if you take me on. You know, choose your best pages, the ones that have got the most impact or the ones that are the most interesting. Try and get a bit of variety in there. So if you've got some pages that are full bleed and some pages that are spot illustrations, then, you know, maybe it's worth showing both those things so they can see how it translates between the different things. But it's really useful to have your own story clearly laid out and you know, understand. You know, most picture books are 32 pages. If you just look at a book on your shelf, a children's book on your shelf, and just copy that format. It might not be exactly what your publisher does, because there's weird things with end papers where sometimes they're stuck down, sometimes they're not, sometimes they're added in. It's very confusing. But if you just copy one that's on your shelf, it's not going to be too far off. And then they will make it a better book. They will work with you to make it a better book. And you know, I think that's a good way to do it, in my experience.
Yeah, I imagine they all have different submission guidelines as well.
Yes.
But you need to do enough to spark their interest. I mean, I would think probably you'd want to spend some time crafting maybe your main character or something, just so you can get a feel of who the protagonist is or something like that. And then, like you say, a few examples of finished art, but then the rest of it, leave it reasonably loose, so they've got an opportunity to put their own stamp on it too,
Yeah,
which will undoubtedly improve it. Yeah.
definitely. I mean, there's weird things where they just, because they come from different disciplines as well, there's certain things they pick up that you would never think of. You know, when you're so invested in a project, there's stuff that you don't spot. You know, if you're this close to something, you don't see the periphery things. If someone appears next to you and like, what's going on there? You're like, oh yeah, of course. I remember with my the first book that I did, which was called Foxley's Feast, I did it with Temple Publishing, with Mike Jolly and Libby Hamilton and Amanda Wood. So we're all awesome people, and I love them, and I'm you know, hopefully working with them again soon. But they pointed out that I had a page in the book where my fox was picking up mushrooms, and they kind of pointed out that might not be a good idea because kids might copy that. And I mean, I think when I first read it, I was like, really? And I was like, actually, that's a really good point. I don't want kids to do that. And it improved it. They had lots of other ones as well, but that one stuck out because I was like, I never would have thought of that. I never would have had that kind of foresight in my head. Yeah. And you know, that the three people I've just mentioned was the person who was running it, the art director, and the editor, and they each massively improved the book. They massively adjusted the way it flowed and gave it a better kind of landing on sort of important parts of the story. It was, yeah, it was. I was much happier with the book after they finished with it. Sometimes it's a bit of kind of, you know, to and fro about things, but that's all part of the process.
That's a good way to think about any illustration project, really. I mean, even if you're doing the smallest magazine project, you know, the art director wants to work with you. Not, you know, often you can bounce ideas around and get a better result. You know, two heads are better than one most of the time.
Yeah, most of the
time. So, just checking out some more questions here. One sec. Oh, hang on. Let's see what we've got here.
Oh, you wanted to talk about style, didn't you?
Yeah.
Is that a good one to talk about?
Yeah. Let's talk about style a little bit.
So for me, I like to try and describe it a little bit more like the way of working that you like to do, because I think people get very hung up on the word style. And I think it's all about finding a consistency within the way you work. So there are variations within that. But generally what you want, in my opinion, to be able to kind of get, especially some of the bigger clients, is to have a portfolio that feels cohesive, that feels like one sort of, that feels like it comes from one creator. When you have a portfolio that has lots of different styles, I mean, in my experience, you know, graphic design is and animation is a bit different because often they want to be able to see your skill set. They want to be able to see what you can do, how you respond to a brief, you know, how you react to it. Whereas with an illustrator, usually they've already gone through that step. They know what they want, and then they're just trying to find it. So they're not really interested in all the things they can do, that you can do. They are interested in the one thing that you can provide, and they've usually made the choice of what that is. So often when you have too many styles or approaches or ways of working in your portfolio, I think it's a hindrance more than a you know, a positive, because it feels like they won't know what they're going to get if they employ you. I mean, I'm not saying don't experiment with stuff at all, but it just means when you're presenting your portfolio, try and have it as a cohesive thing, which can take a bit of work and take a bit of time. But I like to think of it rather than like one specific thing, but as like a bracket. You know, what are the common threads that hold your work together? So there are certain projects where, various projects I've drawn penguins, for example, and there are some times that I've drawn penguins. They're really stylistic. They've got like a little circle head and they've got little triangle bodies, and you know, they're really simplistic. And then there's other times that I've drawn them really quite realistic because you need to tell the difference between different penguins. But there's enough consistency between the two of those. The two extremes of my work. They're the brackets of my work. But I use geometric shapes a lot. The way I use colors, I use kind of clean lines a lot. Those sort of things help define what my style is or my way of working is. And it means that, and I think a really good exercise for people to do, sorry if I'm waffling too much,
Okay.
but Uh, okay. There's a couple of things that I want to share. I've got a tier system in terms of choosing your style. If you've got several different ways of working that you like using, I have this idea of a tier system, and I think the most important thing is which style is the style that brings you the most joy. Which style can you imagine spending years and years working on and adjusting slightly, but that is your your main approach. And if you've got a clear one for that, just ignore the rest of these stages. That's the important one. You want the joy, you want the love of it. No one gets into illustration just for money or anything like that. You do it for the passion. So you want to retain that passion and find joy in it. And I know there are some illustrators that switch their approach at some point later in their career because they've got bored by something or whatever. But often they then change their names to go with it, and there's a reason for it. But yeah, so you start off with the thing that brings you the most joy, and then if you go down to the next tier, I would say, if you've got 2 or 3 things that bring you the same amount of joy, the next tier is what has commercial value, what has the most kind of areas that can be used in. Can it be used in publishing? Can it be used in editorial? Can it be used in whatever? If you've got one style, so you have to, you start thinking kind of cerebrally about it, rather than kind of, you've skipped the heart step because there's a few that you love the same. So start thinking about it kind of from a practical point of view. And that second step, if there's one style that will only ever be used in publishing, and there's another style that can be used across the board, it just makes sense to go with that other one. From a commercial point of view, if you're not interested in commercial stuff, fine, don't worry about any of these steps. But if you're looking for a commercial, sustainable career, those are kind of things that are worth kind of bearing in mind. And then the final tier is just how long it takes you. I think, like, if you've got through all the other stuff and it's the same, and you've got one style that takes you 3 months to do an illustration and one that takes you, a few days, it makes sense to go with the one that takes you a few days. But it's the least important of the 3. But I think those are kind of useful ways to try and trim them down. And then when you've chosen one to stick with for a while, literally just stick with it for a while. Try it for a few months, and try it on everything. So it might be that usually when you get a portrait job in, you immediately reach for the paintbrush, but the rest of the time you've been working digitally. Try and sort of fight that urge and think, well, what happens if I try and do a portrait digitally instead? Because actually sometimes that's where you find the edges of your style. You find where it doesn't work, you find where it fails, and then you can understand more about it. And that whole thing of, like, if you draw portraits all the time and then someone says, can you draw an onion? And you draw an onion thinking, oh, I don't want to draw an onion. And at the end, you're like, I love it. I think that's a really interesting thing to really understand your process as well. Push it till it fails. And then if it doesn't work, move to a different style. That's my kind of approach on it.
That's
Feel free to disagree.
That's a nice way of thinking about it. I think, I guess I'm not really a creative person, so the passion for the style for me would probably come secondary to its functionality.
Okay.
That probably sounds horrible to all the artists listening, but if you've got a style that you can get validated, either by getting feedback from people that know what they're talking about, or by finding some people to hire you to do that, eventually, I think the more you do, the more your clients are going to tell you which parts of your work are most, they're going to tell you which way to go by what they hire you for. And this is how people end up specializing. If you're really good at, if you have a portfolio full of all kinds of things, but you get hired for loads of portraits, then clearly you're good at portraits, and that's how you become a specialist in something. But equally with style, when you're brand new, you likely do have a lot of different styles in your portfolio, and there's nothing wrong with that. Because you are, like you say, you're testing the boundaries. But then you can kind of test that in a fairly methodical way, I think, by sending different kinds of work to different clients and seeing what kind of feedback you get. And if you don't get any feedback on one style, you think, well, it's probably not the one. But you'll quickly notice the ones that are getting positive feedback, and that can lead you down a path that is well, you know, I've not really considered the artistic passion for
Yeah.
this style, but yeah, you've got to factor that in as well, I suppose. Like,
I think you need it to be something that you enjoy. I think you know, you can think about it in a practical way, but I mean, for me, I think, I mean, maybe it's that I've had the luxury to be able to think about it in terms of an artistic thing. Maybe it's you know, my privileges that have allowed me to do that. But I do think, like, if this is the route you're going, you want to be able to. If you hate everything you're doing, then it's not going to bring you a lot of joy, and I think it starts to show in your work a bit. So you know, where there's like subtle changes. I used to get loads and loads of map jobs, and I got to the point where I wasn't enjoying them. And now I do them occasionally, but I kind of keep them few and far between. Mm-hmm. And basically what I stopped doing was stop sharing my map jobs with people, so they didn't see all the map jobs, so they didn't think, oh, that's the person that will do the maps. I mean, it was great in terms of the money, but I was just getting so sick of drawing maps that I just had to adjust my portfolio to do it. And so I think, I mean, I guess it has to be a bit of a balance, but I think when you're really trying to work out which area to push, I think it's good to try and start thinking about, how can I make this film more cohesive? I think it gives us an air of professionalism if people know what they're going to get from you. I think from my point of view, I've always tried to make it so that it's as easy as possible for somebody to commission me. Like, they can find my work really easily because I'm showing it to them, and there's more of it online in a really obvious place that I've shown them. They can look through it, they can, you know, understand what it can be used for, and they know what they're going to get from me. Like, they know, and that they know I'm going to meet deadlines. That's something that I've always prided myself on. I've never missed a deadline. You know, there's a couple of things where I've said, can we extend the deadline, and that's been a mutual you know, decision and stuff between me and the client, but I've never missed one. And I think that's something that I
never
has that's really put me in good stead.
Well, what you were saying about that thread, that common thread between, you know, throughout the style, even when you're doing realistic versus geometric penguins, you know, it's still obvious that that's you, right? And somebody asked a question, it's disappeared now, I couldn't see it, but styles go out of fashion. So what do you do to combat that? And my observation of your work is, well, you evolve your work quite a lot. I mean, you've been testing out some new things recently. And if
which clients aren't into.
Huh?
Well, the clients keep saying we don't want the lines. I'm going to get someone.
Just that one client, to be fair, just that one client. But if I look back at, not so easy to do now, but when we were in the studio, we had big drawers full of old work, and there was some of your old books in there, your Foxy book. And I look at it and I think, this is so insanely different, but it was still you. I could still see the common thread, even 10 years, well, however long ago it was. There was a natural evolution, and if you don't want your style to go out of fashion, you got to evolve, because
sorry,
yeah,
I didn't mean to speak over you then at all. Sorry, that's the
yeah. Well, whoever asked that question, sorry, I didn't catch your name. Styles do go out of fashion, and if you don't change, you'll be starting from square one again eventually.
Yeah. I think from a creator's point of view as well, if you do the same thing constantly, I think you'll get bored. I think you want to test stuff a bit, you want to push stuff a bit, and it might be that over time your work gets kind of slightly more refined, or it gets looser, or it gets and usually it's a bit more of an evolution than it is a full revolution, completely chuck your old style out the window and start something new. But you'll want to mix stuff up a bit, whether it's like, oh, I wonder how it would look if I start drawing the eyes a little bit differently. And then, if you do that, 100 different times, then 10 years down the line, your work looks massively different, which is kind of what's happened with my stuff. Like, yeah, when I look at my older work, like, I'm sure some people prefer my older stuff, but I mean, I don't care. I'm doing what I want to do, and as long as I'm getting the client work and stuff, and I'm able to support myself and things like that, then it's kind of working,
If you are lucky enough to get to the point where you get really popular for one style, that's that's a time to really take a step back and think about that kind of thing, because there are some artists that have been all over every brand, and they're everywhere, but people will get sick of that eventually, I think. So you've got to find ways to push the limits.
I think, to go back, sort of kind of recall something I sort of said earlier, like, I think I really value a lot of the smaller clients I've worked with over the years, because I've got a really good grounding. Like, I've worked with so many amazing people who've changed jobs and they've moved to other things and they've enjoyed working with me, and I work with them again. And I've got these relationships with people in the industry, and maybe they weren't big jobs to start off with, but they've kind of carried me with them a bit as well. And it's I think I feel like I've got a firm set of roots, because I didn't just like blow up immediately and everyone saw my work, and I became, loads of people vast majority of people have no idea who I am. That's fine. Like, as long as there's people who come to my work, and want to commission me, then that's all good. And I think you might see some people who on Instagram or whatever might have thousands and thousands of followers and seem like they're kind of doing the most amazing projects, but maybe they're struggling on a financial level or whatever. You have no idea what's going on behind the scenes of stuff. Like, they might be absolutely minted and good for them and everything, but I think trying not to compare yourself to other people, and trying to kind of cultivate the where you want to sit in the industry, and how you want to kind of use that, rather than worry about working with the biggest clients and things like that. Personally.
Yeah, followers doesn't necessarily mean money, does it?
No.
Not unless you know how to use it.
Well, there's like the influencer side of things that you can use, and yeah, it's not for everyone either. So, but yeah.
Yeah. So we're approaching an hour now. I mean, do you have any time constraints?
I do. I have a portfolio chat meeting with someone in a bit, so I could probably run over a little bit if I sent an email quickly.
Yeah. Maybe we could do another. Could we do another 10 minutes and burn through a few more questions?
Yeah. Just while we're on the subject of social media, can I just bring up something about? I mean, I'm sure people have kind of seen this with a lot of people, but like, likes don't equal your worth. Like, I just want to make that point clear. Like, because some people panic about the fact that they only get a few likes on their work and stuff like that, but no one understands how the algorithm works. No one understands how you really get people to see what you're doing or any of that kind of stuff. And it might be that people don't see your stuff. It may be that it doesn't connect with people. But it doesn't reduce what you're doing. It doesn't minimize any of that stuff. Something that I think is really important is that you're given the option to like and comment. Those are the two things. It doesn't give the option to like quantify how much you like something. So so you might see a picture of a cat that's got a hat on. You think, oh, that's cute, like, and you forget about it immediately. I mean, I'd like that; it's adorable. But you forget about it and you move on. But then you might see another piece, another piece of artwork that someone's done that absolutely changes your view on humanity or something, and it might only have 5 likes, but it's adjusted someone so much, and all you can do is like, and it's the same, even though the only options are like. And so I think it's important to remember that not everyone's going to see the same stuff. Some stuff goes viral and it's useless trash that's unimportant, and there's other stuff that doesn't get seen and it's necessary. And so I think just trying to bear that in mind when you're navigating the social space as a creator as well. It can sometimes people equate their likes with their self-worth, and it's not.
That's a really good point to bring up, Owen. Thanks for that. And just to carry on from that a little bit, I would say it's very easy for someone just starting out in their career to focus on Instagram. Let's say, you could spend 3 months building up your social media following and still not have a paying job at the end of it. It's actually not it should be supplementary to the real work that you're doing. And the real work at the beginning is making your portfolio the best it can be and getting in touch with real clients. The followers will come naturally. Don't spend.
They may even not as well. So some of the people who I respect the most in the world as illustrators just maybe don't play the game or don't post that regularly or whatever, and they haven't got that many followers, and it's like, okay, they're still doing incredible things. Like it's just another way to share your work. And I think there's different ways to do stuff.
Yeah, fair enough. So I don't know if you're contacting your
yeah,
person.
I've actually got till 5:30, so I can go over a little bit more. So
Okay,
I probably want a bit of time to chill out before doing the next chat. But yeah,
there's something else I just thought of, which is how artists are marketing themselves at the beginning, and for me, I've thought a lot about this. I've seen a lot of very expensively printed mail outs, and we get things like everything from postcards to calendars to full books, T-shirts, original screen printed posters and things like that. Stuff that people have really poured their heart and soul and money into. Now, most of it is not suitable for us as an agency. But then you sort of think, well, what am I going to do with this now? We don't, if with the best will in the world, if the work isn't right for us, it's been a waste of money for that artist. It's been a waste of time. And I would say, and I'd appreciate your opinion on this, but I would say the best marketing strategy for a beginner illustrator is the one that's quickest and cheapest, and that is email, in my mind. Yeah.
No, I completely agree. I mean, also, the vast majority of us will start off without a lot of capital behind us, and so thinking about it from a practical business point of view, I mean, that's the thing. I think it's really important in order to build that career, you need to start getting your business head on, because you're not just going to be an illustrator. You're going to be, the PR person. You're going to have do business contracts, all that kind of stuff. And so getting that business head on and being like, well, is this actually going to get me work? Is this actually going to, spending 300 quid printing these shirts, how likely is it it's going to make a difference versus sending an email? And I would say start with an email, and if that doesn't work, maybe go another route. But I mean, I always just did it by email. I didn't have the sort of money behind me to print off that other stuff,
It doesn't make sense to do it until your style has been validated in some way. Like you might make T-shirts, and the quality of the T-shirt is great, right? But the style of the illustration, nobody wants. It makes sense to get feedback on your work cheaply and quickly, so you know that your style's good. Once you're confident that your style's good, once you've got that feedback, and once you're getting paid to do illustration, then by all means print off some postcards or whatever, But at the start, it doesn't make sense to me.
I mean, there's various routes as well. Like if you really want to produce some kind of product, then there's all these crowdfunding things like Kickstarter or Patreon type things. Like there's various ways to make money in the industry using your work, and thinking outside the box with that sort of stuff is really good. But I mean, I would agree. I never sent any of that kind of stuff. I mean, I printed my portfolio to go and traipse around to different people, and then I very quickly realised actually I had a slightly dodgy iPad, but it did the job better. It was the quality of the images were better, and it was cheaper. I could update it really quickly, and so I started going around and I could pinch in and zoom in on things, and I wasn't dependent on a printer that kept breaking or the colours kept coming out too dark or any of that kind of stuff. It was a digital format. It was really easy. I mean, obviously, I had to have an iPad to be able to do that, but I think in the long run, it probably worked out cheaper than me having to reprint these really expensive pieces of paper every time.
I also think at the moment, after the pandemic, there's so many people working from home. If you post things to clients or whatever, there's no guarantee there's anybody there to pick it up.
Yeah, that's really true.
So that's even more of a waste.
Yeah.
Let's see if there's any more questions here. Will this be recorded to watch again? Yes, it will. I'll upload it into our reels, and I guess Owen might do the same. I've seen some questions flash up in the chat here and disappear again. Well, I know that Lizzie Lomax asked you, where do you see your work in 10 years, Owen?
Oh, I've always been rubbish at that. I'm not a forward thinker. I'm such a simple human. I like drawing, and that's as far as my brain thinks. I'm like, some people are really good at kind of visualizing what they want to be doing, but I found that my career hasn't really gone the way I expected it to, but has led me to an area that makes a lot of sense. I often end up doing factual based things or non-fiction based things, which I never even considered when I started doing illustration, because I mean, to be fair, non-fiction stuff was not in a great state when I graduated uni, and it's gone up and up, and it's become more and more interesting, and it's kind of evolved to become a really interesting area to work in. But I didn't even think about it, and then through a series of weird mishaps and strange projects that I did for friends and various research bits, I just kind of fell into it, and it's the thing that I'm kind of best known for. My books with Flying Eye are all non-fiction books, and I write them myself and everything. So yeah, I mean, I'm probably the worst person to ask for with that. I was just kind of going with the flow.
That's okay, fine. Yeah. We've got one question here, which is pretty interesting. Could you describe the workflow of a typical editorial project? Brief, contract, timeline, etc. I think that's really good for a new starter to know, because you don't necessarily know, do you, until you get into it, and you can feel a bit nervous about what to expect, asking the wrong questions. You know, nobody wants to look stupid in their first job, right? But so maybe we could run through a typical project. That'd be good.
Yeah, sure. Do you want me to run through it from my perspective as an illustrator?
Sure, yeah.
Okay, so usually I will either get a message from you guys or direct from the client saying, you know, we've got this project. They give me a rough outline of what it is without too many details. Sometimes they'll give me a budget, sometimes they'll give me a deadline. Usually not. Usually they're just kind of trying to entice me and kind of get me interested. I'll then kind of get back to them and say, you know, what is the deadline? What is it you actually want me to do?
Mm-hmm.
How much money is it? All that kind of stuff. Or I'll send it to you guys to do the same. We figure out all of that and the contracts and all that kind of stuff, which you'll be able to fill in a lot better than I would. And only once all that stuff's organised. Sorry, what were you going to say?
I can fill in some blanks.
Yeah, fill in the blanks while we go. Let's do it.
Well, it's amazing how much those first emails from clients vary in well, I was going to say quality, but let's say detail.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can get an email from a client and it'll have what they want, what size it's got to be, when it's got to be in by, when they need to see sketches, how much money they've got, and you think, and you can decide there and then, yes or no, I can do it or I can't do it. Or sometimes you've got to exchange 5 or 6 emails just trying to get that information.
Yeah.
Which is fine. I mean, that's usually my part.
Yeah.
But yeah. So I suppose from an illustrator's point of view, you need to decide what you need to know in order to be able to decide if you can do the project. So, I mean, that could even, aside from the technical stuff like what kind of file formats or whatever is needed, or if they need animation or whatever else, you need to know the schedule. You need to know what you're drawing. Like if you can't draw penguins, and this is a project to draw penguins, then well, maybe you shouldn't take it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess this leads on to another question we got in. I can't find it now, but it's about money.
Mm-hmm.
And trying to decide how to price your own work. it's not an easy question to
It's
answer.
the hardest question.
Yeah. Because well, every client has a different budget. Every single one, right? But if you're starting with editorial clients, which many illustrators do, just ask what their budget is. You know, you can work out your hourly rate or whatever if you want to do that, but really it just comes down to asking what they've got and thinking, well, is it worth it, weighing it up and deciding if you want to do it, and deciding if you want to negotiate. It gets a lot more complicated when you get into bigger, longer jobs, but you know, probably by that point you've got the experience to be able to figure that out for yourself. So my only tip there really is just to ask what the client's budget is. Well, I got right off track there, so I'll let you jump in again. Let's imagine we've got all the details we need from the client in order to decide about the project.
Yeah, so with the details, there's all the technical stuff, and then, you know, it's also important to check how much kind of creative freedom they want to give you, or whether they're going to sort of dictate to you what they want you to draw, whether they've got specific ideas or areas they want you to focus on. If they want you to use a brand color palette or something like that, which occasionally happens with editorial and things as well. You know, just understanding the brief properly, and make sure all of that stuff's in place. Make sure you know the deadline, all that kind of stuff before you even start properly thinking about it. Then you research. Research is the most key thing. Whether the research is the article they've sent you that it's to do with, or whether it's finding more out about, I don't know, engine fuel made with corn or something, you know, like try and actually see if you can get to a point where you kind of vaguely understand what it is you're drawing. And then there's the visual research. Make sure you understand how it looks. So, you know, if it's talking about a certain type of corn, make sure you know what that type of corn looks like and not end up drawing a sweet corn. You know, like those sort of things can affect how your then kind of process of coming up with ideas actually flows as well. Because, you know, if you draw something that's very much based on the shape of a specific corn and it doesn't look anything like that, then your idea is ruined. So yeah,
it's a good point.
I think research is so undervalued. Like when with artwork, so often you see the tip of the iceberg, properly just the tip of the iceberg, but there's so much underneath it, and research is a vast majority of that. Yeah, and so understanding that stuff, and then I will do a bit of time thinking about what the best way is to kind of get across the vibe of the article, not necessarily everything about it, but the most important elements of it. Trying to understand what those elements are and kind of pick those apart, and then start drawing some really terrible thumbnails. And I mean terrible, really appalling. You've seen so many of my terrible. They're awful. But these, you know, there are these squiggles and circles and things, and I'll send them back, and they're roughly the right kind of pixel ratio for the final artwork. And you know, I've done little lines to show where the text would go if that's an important part of it, and then I would have a paragraph saying, right here is the corn, over there is a jet engine, and you know, like I will explain through the artwork so that someone doesn't look at it and think, what is this?
Yeah, often you're going to be asked to do an illustration for an article where that needs an image to help explain it. You know, if it's for a science magazine or economics or something like that, sometimes it needs a picture just to get the message across. So really, you've got to know what you're talking about in order to communicate that message well.
100%.
Back to the typical workflow. We've got a brief. We've got the technical details. Contract is a big subject to go into here, but let's not. I could, but let's not.
There are people that can help you with contracts, just to put it out there. You know, there are certain, like AOI, for example. I'm part of the AOI, and I sometimes send contracts to them. They're not lawyers, but they have experience in it, and they can point out some clauses that are. I think one of the big things to look out for is make sure they're not trying to own copyright. Let's just put that out there. Like if they don't have a reason to own copyright, don't let them have copyright. Your
Yeah,
copyright
that's the
is
first
your,
thing I'm looking for in an illustration contract, for sure. Yeah, if they can use your work for the rest of time for any use that they want,
and sell it to others as well.
and they're paying you 500 quid for half a page in a magazine, that ain't happening.
Yeah, and you lose all your moral rights as well, so they can,
Yep, they
sell
don't
it
even
to
have to
causes you
credit
don't
you.
believe in and everything. So yeah.
So I've done some contract advising with the AOI as well. So I've seen my fair share of bad contracts.
I bet. So once we've got the sort of rough idea sorted, they will come back with their feedback and they say, oh, make sure you're not concentrating too much on this, maybe concentrate on that other bit, and maybe I'll do a round or two of making sure that we've got the idea in the right place. Then when we're happy with the idea, I would usually then do a refined draft where it looks, basically it's a line drawing of the final image that I'm going to do, so they can see exactly how it looks, and they're going to be like, oh, I'm not sure about how big that plane is, can we adjust that? And then we'll go through that, and there'll be an adjustment until that's signed off, and then once that's signed off, I'll then do the final artwork, and then there might be a couple of adjustments at the end there. But if clients want big edits that were signed off during the draft and stuff like that, then we'll start talking about whether they're going to pay a bit extra for it and stuff as well.
Yeah, you want to encourage the major feedback early on in the process when it's easy to change, because if you get to the end and they say, well, actually, we don't want penguin anymore, we want a bat. Yeah, good. I'm struggling to think of any other bird. That'll do.
I saw a bat outside my window earlier. It came to my brain.
Yeah, that's going to take some time to fix that. And if we use an editorial as an example, I mean, typically there might be up to 3 rounds of revisions, right? And ideally, the last round of feedback is just going to be final tweaks. Move that a bit to the left, make that a little bit brighter, that kind of deal. Yeah. And then you're handing it in. I'm sure we've missed some steps there, but it's not a complicated process.
No, I mean, I think
nothing to be scared of, certainly.
No, I think there's the element of, if you disagree with art directors, then you can kind of fight your corner, but equally at the end of the day, they're paying for something from you, and usually I just end up kind of doing what they want me to do, unless I have kind of a moral issue with it, and in which case I kind of start to get a bit more awkward. Possibly.
That's interesting. I've always considered you to be, you give your opinion on stuff, and a lot of artists don't, and I would encourage people to do it, because you're being hired for your creative expertise. The art director wants to add their expertise into it too, so fine, you've got to work together, but you definitely shouldn't be scared of sharing your opinion. If you think it should be a bat and not a penguin, then yeah.
And usually there's a reason you've done the stuff you've done, and you can explain that. And often I do win people around, but there are some times where they're just like, nah, we want a bat, and it's like, okay, I guess I'm drawing a bat.
As we're approaching the end here, Owen, maybe we could do a few quick fire questions if people want to stick them in the questions box or the comments. There's one here. Any quick tips on time management?
Oh, I'm not a good person for that. My work-life balance is appalling, because I prioritize making sure I always meet deadlines. So I'm not a good one for that. You're probably better at answering that, James.
If I was a freelancer, I don't know what I'd do. I mean, I keep pretty. I work. Yeah, let's move on.
I've got a tip. Do it now, not later.
What work? Don't leave things to the last minute. You don't want to get into that homework Sunday night thing, do you?
exactly. Because also if you get it done now, then it gives you the option to either take some time off later, or if more work comes in and you want to do it and you're up for it, you can do it. Whereas if you've left it to the last minute, you can't. So I think it offers you more options. Obviously, within reason. If you can't do it right now because you're tired or ill or you don't want to or whatever, leave it until it's a good time to do it. But you know, when you get the option of doing it earlier rather than later, I think it's a good thing to do.
Yeah. Do you have a time of day that you find you're most productive?
Yeah, annoyingly, like now, nighttime. And for years that worked amazingly. But now that I've got two small children, it doesn't work great. So I have to struggle through the morning and struggle through the afternoon. I'm very much a night owl. I used to work till 3 o'clock in the morning and you know, wake up at sort of 10 or 11 or something. That used to be my kind of approach to work. So it's
Right.
it's massively changed now. You know, I'm up at 7 every morning, and I mean, yeah, or earlier. So
here's another quick question. How do you balance client work and personal work?
it's an interesting one. I don't think they always have to be separated. I think something about people as creators themselves, part of your style is what it is that interests you and how you perceive the world and what you find interesting. And for example, I like animals. I find animals fascinating. I can draw animals endlessly. And so if I read an article that's got a bat in it, I'm going to draw that bat. It's going to happen.
Okay.
Whereas it might also have stuff about architecture, and there might be another illustrator that will read it and be like, I want to draw the architecture. I might draw a tiny bat in the corner. And so I think there's ways that you can sort of make, you know, adjust something to make it fit your agenda of what you find interesting. Because also, you know, if you're drawing stuff that you find fascinating, you will do a better job than something that you find boring because you get sick of it and you don't have the passion for it. So so I think there's that element of it. And then it's something that I struggle with. I've always kind of prioritized doing commissions rather than personal work because I don't know, I just have that in my head. I guess it's sort of inbuilt capitalism or something, but I feel like I need to I've been trying to now set myself a morning a week to do my own work, but I keep endlessly failing at that, of doing stuff for myself. I'm developing something at the moment I'm really excited about. I can't talk to people about, but and I keep not finding the time to do it, but I'm really excited about it. So yeah.
We're getting a few questions in here about how to find your first clients and get your first jobs. We've kind of covered that earlier on. We'll stick this video up in our reels of our respective Instagram platforms. Another question here: are we open to doing university talks? Well, this actually came about because you and I did a Q&A with Falmouth University, and it was quite fun.
Yeah, no, it was
Short.
Chatting with other people is really lovely, like, especially about work, and when people have different opinions about stuff as well. I've done talks with other illustrators who have got an entirely different process to me, and I find it fascinating. I did a workshop actually with William Grill, who did Shackleton's Journey and stuff, which is all very relevant at the moment with the news of them finding Shackleton's endeavour. He's an amazing illustrator. He's a lovely man. He's also on folio, isn't he? I forgot about that. But yeah, our way of working is so vastly different, and we kind of disagreed on not important things and agreed on lots of the fundamental things, and it was really fascinating to kind of see that variety. And you know, we're all creators that do stuff in different ways, and so I think that's really fascinating.
Yeah. I mean, I see all the illustrators that I work with. They all work in completely, well, not completely, but they all work in their different ways, and they've all got their different quirks and strengths and weaknesses, and there's no one right way to do it, is there?
No, absolutely not.
Yeah. That seems like a nice ending there.
Yeah, that works for me.
So if any of the people watching haven't followed Owen, they can follow you at Owen Davey Draws.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, that's it. And yeah, if you're interested in the portfolio chats thing, keep an eye out on there.
They're monthly, aren't they?
They're monthly. They go really quickly as well, though. So this isn't me trying to get you to put me as a notification thing, but you might want to do that if you're really interested in getting a portfolio chats thing, because they go super quick. And there are some amazing people that have done it, and they're really lovely humans as well. I've chatted to lots of them, and they're so helpful, and the feedback we get about them is amazing. So yeah, think about it. If anyone's from an underrepresented group, then please
and I try and answer a lot of questions for new illustrators on my YouTube channel, The Illustrator's Guide. So if you want to get some questions answered there, you can email me there too.
It's really good as well. Just to say, I've watched all of yours because I've passed people onto it and stuff as well from the portfolio chats. They're ace.
Thank you.
Not to just sort of be too nice to you, but they are really good.
I appreciate that. All right. Well, thanks for watching, everybody. Thank you, Owen, for chatting with me. It's been fun.
Thank you, mate. I'm sure we'll chat tomorrow.
All right, then. Watch me fumble around trying to close this down now.
I'm going to try and leave as well. Bye, everyone.
Right. See ya.
Look after yourselves.